I feel the topic that I chose today is extremely important, and please give me a minute to just explain why. I have watched and witnessed through social media our once very bounded autism community become divided. Everyone feels a need to take a side, political sides, health sides, therapy, services. And 30 years ago, when Joey was first diagnosed, we were all trying to help each other figure things out. There might be a therapy or something that worked for someone that doesn't necessarily work for our child, but we were open to hearing it because we were happy that it was working for them. Now it's become a them against us. And it's really bothered me to watch our beautifully tight community that we once had be so tremendously divided. And because there's so many topics to be divided on, it's very rare to find someone who thinks the way we do. But we don't have to close ourselves off to that. And my guest today may seem a little off brand for me, but I really love her page and I've been following her for a while. Now, her background is in the climate movement, and we're not going to be talking about climate on this, but the reason I really wanted her on is because she used to believe one way, and then she saw evidence that the way she was believing was different, and so she gradually started to switch sides. And her humbleness is beautiful, but as myself, as somebody who put down spelling to communicate or certain different kinds of methods, I also really had to become humbled, especially because I was a public figure on social media. Not a big public figure. I'm not trying to say it in any way that I'm a big presence, but I had enough people following me that I knew that I said things that were wrong, and it bothered me. So today I wanted to bring on the wonderful Lucy Biggers. And Lucy, first of all, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your energy. You made me stop scrolling. I don't have anyone in my family who has autism, but I loved your content, and just something about your aura really drew me in. I feel like we're like kindred spirits somehow.
We so are. And I was the same way with you. So that's so funny because I just love anybody who is willing to think outside of what their past has been. So this is part of what I want to talk about. So you have tackled so many different subjects on your page, but the one thing that you said that is something I say all the time, and I'm just like, ooh, we're right there together, is when you said someone is not a bad person because their opinions are different from yours. Now, I have said through my years in autism, because I have been a teacher for autism for over 25 years, and because I was working with my late husband, who was a medical doctor, and we believed a lot of things 25 years ago that I would shudder at the thought of saying now. But I wasn't ever a bad person. I was never evil or horrible or even stupid to say the things that I said back then, because it was just based on who I was at the time and the knowledge that I'd been given. And you might say, well, then you shouldn't speak until you know it all. But let me tell you, nobody should speak then until they're 50 years, 60 years old, because you're constantly learning. So tell me more about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so pumped to have this conversation. Just a little background. So I worked in the news for 12 years. I'm 35. I know I look like a spring chicken. People are shocked to learn, but I'm 35. I have 2 kids, and I've worked in news and media since I got out of college in 2012. And I worked in a newsroom that was sort of at the forefront of social media video. And so I've really this whole time been coming up along this technology, and everything you're saying, it's so true. I think what's happened over the last 12, 15 years, I think since 2015, I want to say so 10 years, is that we've all moved online, and we have so many benefits. The connection, you and I met, right? We have all these awesome benefits, but what's happened is also this side effect of polarization and our inability to have dialogue that you really get when you're face to face with someone, and you can have a good dialogue, you can feel their energy, you can find compromise, and we're all just now keyboard warriors. And so it lends itself to group think and inside thinking and outside thinking. And so I was very caught up in the climate alarmism narrative. And I think that it's really important to understand that as a climate activist, I thought the world was going to end in 10 years. So for the average person who's not part of the movement and doesn't understand it, it was much more extreme than maybe if you're sort of picking it up through osmosis and following the news. And then as I got older, you mature, you start to see the world as more nuanced. I have 2 kids. And I just started to realize, wow, like some of the things that I was pushing on my page that were more alarmist and black and white thinking, I realized were more complex. And I had to basically start coming out with my new ideas and coming up against that group think that I had been indoctrinated in for so long. And I got to tell you, it was really, really scary because I knew I was going to get a lot of backlash. And I have gotten a lot of backlash, honestly, even from people in my personal life, which has been the hardest. And then obviously from people online. But I just say, please unfollow me if you don't like it. I'm sorry.
I know.
And so now I honestly got back into this content making only 2 months ago, which is really crazy.
Oh, wow.
I was sitting on it for 5 years, and then I finally decided to make content. And one of the themes that's emerged I was not expecting, because I thought I was just going to be talking about climate change, was everything that you're talking about, the themes you're talking about dialoguing with people who don't have the same ideas than you, and not categorizing people as bad because they have a different opinion than you, which by the way is common sense. But I think with social media, we've like somehow lost that.
We're also almost taught to believe that way. I mean, there are a lot of people saying you can't be friends with that person if they believe this way.
Right.
And that is just preposterous. I mean, we have all walked such different lives, had different paths, and it's like, I don't want everyone to believe, because if everybody believed the way I did, I'd still be stuck in the same mindset I was 25 years ago. I wouldn't have grown. I wouldn't have expanded. But the dialogue piece is important, and I really want to talk about that. One of the first things I want to talk about is that kind of group loyalty. But the dialogue is something that is important to me because I am a person who really loves to have a conversation. I don't even love to text that much. If I have to.
Voice memo.
I know. Did I do that to you?
You did a voice memo to me, but I am a big voice memoer too. I am a grade A voice memo. I'm like a certified yapper. I've like said that like I love to chat. I love the sound of my own voice. So, but I also love to listen. I'm also curious. I'm not just like blah blah blah. Listen to me, but I'm curious about people and I love talking. God.
Yes. Now the voice memo thing is big to me because I'll be texting somebody and I think I can't convey this message the way I want to convey it through a text. And so I'll do a voice message because there's a softness that comes, or a more urgency or whatever it might be, but you have to hear that intonation in order. Don't you always laugh? Like I always crack up when like Siri, because Siri now is speaking with more emotion. Do you know that? Have you know? Like, ooh, Siri, you're making my voice message sound a little heated right there. They're like, because I'll be like, I'll say, Siri, send a text to Ron saying, I'm expecting you home for dinner or something like that. And then Siri will be like, I'm expecting you home for dinner. And I'm like, wait, Siri, let's soften that up. Let's take out the exclamation point, make it a little bit nicer. So the voice piece is really important. And there's also, like you said, the keyboard warrior. Like when we have a conversation, I have listened to conversations that I would never have walked into a social media room with and thought, oh, this is not a subject that's comfortable with me. But I heard somebody out because they were sitting right in front of me, and I certainly didn't want to start an argument, and I let them speak. And you've got that intuitive feeling that you get when you're just like, should I say something or should I not? And you have to kind of follow that. But okay, so with that, that's one thing. But let's talk more about this, what you're talking about earlier, and this group loyalty, which is, in my opinion, stronger than ever when it comes to politics right now. Right. And my frustration with it is they are taking subjects that should not be political and assigning it to a party. And oh my gosh, that just drives me nuts.
Yeah, me too.
So let's talk about.
It's very emotional. Yeah, so I feel like for me, so like I'm now moderate. I think of myself as like a center person. I have some opinions that are center left, some that are center right. But I've come from a very, very, very left wing perspective. So that's what I speak about more on my page because it's what I know. I can only really share about my story. That's what I'm an expert on. And what happened for me was I worked in a newsroom with a lot of 20-somethings and the 20 teens, and, you use Slack to communicate. And so what happened, it was like, I actually made a video about this on my page, where it's like you already have the group pressure to fit in, right? You're looking around, you're getting cues, what opinions are in, what are out. That sort of like lizard brain that we have from evolving in tribes, where you just want to stay safe in the group. And then you have Slack, where people are saying their opinions publicly.
Yeah.
And so then you're even getting it even more, because it's like, it's kerosene on the fire of groupthink. And then you throw in, it's the 20-somethings, and it's Trump getting elected, and it's social media, and there's protests. And it's just like the perfect situation where you change your beliefs. What happened for me was I stopped listening to my internal truth to fit in with the group. And what my group was pushing was a lot about this idea of white privilege. Like, if you're white, you need to just sit down and you shouldn't have an opinion on this. And listen, there are instances where, of course, you should be listening to people of diverse backgrounds and giving them a voice, and that historically has not been the case. So I love that. But it went too far, right? Where it was then all of a sudden I'm like, well, I'm white, I shouldn't speak on this. I don't have an opinion. And so it disempowered myself. Or I was cisgender, right? Or I'm able-bodied, like whatever things. It was like I was every privilege under the sun. So I was like, I should just not talk. And even though I don't necessarily agree with something, or it doesn't make sense, and I have a different opinion, I'm not going to speak, because I don't want to ruffle any feathers. And there's a phrase, it's like a cone of like a silence. Basically, that experience taught me not to listen to my internal voice. And I think that is just a lesson that's for everybody when you're in whatever group. For me, it was very left-wing newsroom, but you could be in a very right-wing space, right? If you're in a very right-wing town, or maybe you're in you're vegan and everybody's vegan, or you're very Christian. And it's just really hard to go against the group and figure out what is actually your truth. But I think it's so important now with the world that we live in, and it seems like things are moving so quickly. There's so much information. We've got AI, social media, everything's going faster. And I think we need grounded, wise voices that are sharing from their point of view. And that is what I'm trying to model on my page, is finding, that inner kernel of truth and speaking from that place, and not letting like the haters get you off your center. Because for years I did not speak out of fear of the haters, and now that I have started to speak, I mean, I have to tell you, I'm having like the time of my life. I'm so happy.
I'm so glad.
Thank you. And I've just had to overcome fear and just be like, you know what, I have one life to live. I'm not going to live on my deathbed at 90 and be regretful that I was afraid of people giving me crap.
And so much of it is not people anyway. One of the interesting things that I've come across is, as you know, my son is a speller, and it's almost comical, the very obvious robotic messages that I get about spelling being not right, because you have to understand, because I know that autism is not something that you're as dived into.
But I did listen to telepathy tapes.
Okay, good. Okay.
Which is important.
So they talk about ABA, and they talk a little bit about applied behavior analysis, which is a special kind of therapy that is everywhere. It's in the schools.
Yes.
It's what insurance pays for. It is a $7 billion a year industry. Okay. $7 billion. They are not going down without a fight. And the spellers are massively criticizing so many versions of ABA. And so I have actually been offered money to do a video promoting ABA. Wow. And I won't say who it's from or anything such as that, but I've been offered to promote ABA, of which I turned down. They are paying robots to have this same narrative, because the messages that I get that are robotic are super interesting. It's very, very easy to know they're robotic. First off, they start almost always by saying they're an SLP, speech and language pathologist. And then they go on, I have like 20 or 30 years experience, that kind of a thing. It will go into that. And then it goes on to, this has been debunked. It has been proven wrong. And there was one case that was a bad situation of where the child was manipulated, and it turned out to be this legal case. One case, okay? And in general, there is manipulation going on in the spelling industry by people who are,
Right.
saying, oh, they pointed and they said this, when a lot of it is manipulated. But
Right.
that is not a reason to not be doing it.
Right.
And so these same messages are coming through and they almost have the same dictation. And then one of them actually said, you should read my article on the subject. And I went to the publication where they wrote this article, and to make a long story short, the site was nothing but that article. Like it was like they had literally had a website of just the one article. And I tried to research the person, and no,
Right.
it was just an article. It's
so weird though, and like it's so interesting that you said that, because it's like, how much time do you give the trolls? Because I had this happen to me where I was made a post. So I work for this company called the Free Press, which is a news company.
Yeah.
Founded by Barry Weiss, and like we've done seed funding like every company has. I think we raised like $20 million over a few years, whatever. Like I don't really know the details, but like I know we raised it from like a bunch of different like well-off people, like any company does. So I made this video about the Free Press, and all of a sudden I start getting these things in that are like, she's bought off by billionaires, she's bought off by billionaires. And it's like, all of a sudden everybody, like, you are bought off by like so-and-so, like Harlan Crow, like, and I'm like, who's Harlan Crow? Like, I'm like, guys, no one tells me what to post. Like, I genuinely am posting my truth. And like, there's so many parallels here between what you're saying and the spellers, and like what I'm trying to do and what you're trying to do. We're genuine people. Like, this is like a populist, genuine people who are choosing to become visible and create change and live in truth. Truly, like, nobody's paying me, and I'm not that there's anything wrong with being paid, but like, I choose to make, like, my company pays my salary, but like, I make what I want to make. And these people come on and they're like, how do you feel being a billionaire, like shill, like you should feel horrible, and like DMing me, and like it kind of started to get a little weird, and then it kind of went away, and I was like, do I acknowledge that like the billionaire, anti-billionaire bots are out? Like,
yeah,
it's just really like thoughtless, and I feel like everything that like the movements claim we are actually the other. Like, we're not doing anything nefarious, we're just being genuine.
Yeah.
And then everybody's coming and attacking us.
It works. It works. It works.
It's trying to
That's why they're
people.
Yeah, it's trying to, and it does, because
And it makes people afraid.
Because the younger version of me would not have been able to put up with all that I put up with now. And the older version of me is like, I speak my truth. I have experience. I'm not concerned with what the haters have to say anymore, because I realize that so many of them are not real, or they've been hurt. A lot of it, especially when I get adults with autism who are upset with something that I do, I realize that a lot of them have had really challenging lives to navigate, and they already have a hard time with social situations. And now we're wanting them to comment and be able to just listen. But my message to anybody out there, is like, if you don't like something, there are so many other things at the buffet that you can choose from. Just don't listen to it. Just move on. And you know what I always find, Lucy, which is really interesting, is when I've been an avid follower of somebody for a long time, and then they say something that goes against my strong values, and that tornness between, but I really, really like 99.9% of what you do. Right. Do I want to unfollow you for that one opinion that you have? Because I don't know your life. I don't know how it's unfolded. And maybe you have a validity in that opinion. What do you think about that too?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think you should, I don't agree with everything that I don't have to agree with every single thing that somebody says that I follow. I think everyone's going to have different opinions. I definitely think I can hold space for disagreeing about stuff. I think it's hard when I feel like maybe they're like really wrong and misinformed, and then it's a little bit harder. But ultimately, I think the more speech and opinions that we have out there, the better. I'm for that. I don't think we should be in like a cancel culture environment. People should feel empowered to speak their truth, and that's what we need more of. So I'm tolerant for it, but obviously maybe on a personal level, when someone says something I don't like, I might be like personally like kind of bummed, but that's their right.
I know. Okay, so you had talked about a book recently in one of your posts.
So actually, it's a shout out for my company, a podcast that we produce called Conversations with Coleman Hughes. He's awesome, really great thinker. And he had on another really great thinker named Tim Urban, who is the creator of this blog called Wait But Why, and he's a cartoonist. So he makes these really bad hand-drawn drawings that like have gone viral. He's been around for about 10 years. And he has a book called What's Our Problem? And it addresses a lot of the topics that we're talking about today, which is how do we break out of this polarized tribalism that we're in that seems to have taken over in the last 10 years. And he has this theory called the ladder of the mind. And when you're on the lower ladder, you're running by that sort of lizard brain tribal thinking that I was talking about before, where you're trying to fit in with the group. It's all about safety and survival, which we evolved with that. When you're in small groups, it was safe to just be part of the group. That was a survival mechanism. Obviously, we now live in cities. Our communities are complex. Our civilization is complex. And with that complex culture, we've evolved into a higher way of thinking that is more complex. But what happens, and that's called the higher mind, and it's at the top of the ladder. But obviously, like anything in life, he says, like we kind of go up and down the ladders throughout the day and throughout life. So if you're a rabid Giants fan and the Giants lose and you're pissed and you're yelling at the TV and you're superstitious and you have to wear a certain jersey, like, okay, you're kind of in tribal thinking.
You're describing my husband, but yeah.
Oh, really? but it's harmless. I'm glad I picked the Giants. But it's harmless, right? Like it's your team. Like it's okay. Like that's fun. Like have that. Or you're shooting the shit with your friends or gossiping, whatever. So there's a time and a place. We all have our low mind thinking. But basically what he says is our politics now has been hijacked by low mind thinking and tribalism with the advent of cable news and 24-hour cable news. It was more fun to just create the in-group than to report the facts. And then social media, again, it's like a kerosene on the fire situation. It's made it worse. Who you follow, the algorithms know what you like. The memes are very black and white thinking. And so he just tries to argue to people that you need to come out with politics. We need to come out of this tribal and get up to the ladder. And he says something really interesting about how do you talk to someone in your family who disagrees with you politically. And he said, if you or that other person is not going to be able, is going to lose their temper, then you're not ready to have the conversation. So maybe it's you who would lose your temper, or it would be the other person. They cannot have a conversation about politics without losing their temper. He literally says it's probably best to just talk about things that are not to do with politics.
100%.
But if you know that this type of person, maybe you test the waters about this, if you know the person can have an exchange of ideas, and that's a really beautiful thing. And that's what we should be aiming toward in our society, and getting out of what like these sort of base level, lower rung thinking echo chambers and getting up into this higher mind where an exchange of ideas is actually an asset, and we think of it as something that's positive, versus when you're in the lower rungs, an exchange of different ideas is a threat to the group. And so a lot of us, not every topic, but especially with politics, and I think the last 10 years, basically the advent of Trump, I would say, for numerous reasons, that's when that tribalism has really locked in. And we talked a little bit in our voice memos before this and texting like about fear. And I think it's all about fear. And like you were saying too, people who are unhealed and have past childhood traumas and all these things, like all of us do, are vulnerable to being hijacked by fear narratives. And that's what keeps you in tribal thinking, where you're not in that high mind. Your hijacked nervous system is keeping you in that low mind where you're not thinking clearly and you're going off of emotion. So there's a lot
I love it. I love everything that you said. Do you follow by chance Raquel, the capacity expert? Do you know who she is?
I don't think so. No,
I think you would love her. She's a therapist, and I think it's Raquel. I think it's what it is, Raquel, something like that, the capacity expert. And she talks a lot about how we have like tried to pad ourselves with all these triggers where we say, you can't talk about that. That's a trigger for me, rather than increasing our capacity for being able to be around those triggers.
Right.
So for me, I think of it like I'm afraid of snakes. So if I were to go in a field, I would, rather than just kind of like put my toes a little bit into the field and just maybe not go really, really deep in the field, but maybe just kind of go in and then come out and then kind of go in and come out, feeling until I felt like comfortable that I was going to be okay. Rather than saying, I can't even be within 50 feet of a field where there might be a snake, because that's what we have done. We've gotten to this point of, you can't talk about this around me because it triggers me. And I can respect certain triggers, and certainly if you have close people in your life that you love, you want to stay away from those triggers. But we can't go around always the time like patting ourselves from these.
It's so true.
But I want to go back more about algorithms, because algorithms are truly the reason that we're in this mess to begin with. Now, I love my algorithm. My algorithm creates, and that's why I wanted to talk about the triggers first, is my algorithm creates a no trigger zone for me. My algorithm is so fine-tuned on TikTok, because if I go to somebody that I know is against, not only will I unfollow, I will sometimes put not interested, so that the algorithm doesn't give me more of that, because I don't want to be triggered. Okay. So it's delightful. Like, I can go onto my algorithm and not have a problem, but it also, what it's doing is it's giving me false beliefs that everyone thinks the way I do. Because I've had that algorithm so fine-tuned that I never get anything against what I believe in. So I think that's how everybody believes.
But
so
I think it's interesting though, because I do think also there's a value in that, especially for someone like, I feel like both of us are sort of on the edge of psychic, like this, like the collective edge of what's acceptable. And so I actually like that my algorithm is like a safe space for me, because it allows me to feel less alone when, like, you turn on cable news, you read the newspaper. If I go look at some of my other friends and what they're posting, it's so not my truth. And so I actually like it as almost an incubator space. Obviously, you can take it to an extreme, and people do, and I think it's destructive when you named all the reasons why. But for me, like, when I got back into posting content, I was so scared to do it, and I started on TikTok because I knew I was going to have people on there who the algorithm would serve it to the right people, and they would build me up. And so I posted for a month every day on my TikTok before I felt brave enough to post on my Instagram, because my Instagram is where I have my family, my old coworkers, and my old activist friends. And I was scared, and I had a reason to be scared, by the way, because I was really bad when I finally got to Instagram, and I had like 2,000 people unfollow me. I had hate comments. It was bad, but I
remember encouraging you, because
because I made a post,
and I was just like, it's okay, you got this,
do it. TikTok's amazing. I love TikTok. I feel like it's like the discoverability platform. It's so awesome. And then I think Instagram though is like way more mainstream. I feel like I have a lot of pressure on Instagram to like be perfect, and on TikTok I'm like shooting the shit and yapping about God knows what.
Nothing is worse than Facebook though. I mean, I
don't go on there.
Oh my God, I get 90% of my hate on Facebook.
Yeah, I don't go.
Practically never get it on TikTok.
Yeah.
Rarely on Instagram, but I go on Facebook, and it is, it's a scary place.
Yeah, it's not going.
So what I find with Facebook is I typically don't comment very much, and I don't engage as much, because I'm more afraid of it. So if you're wondering why I've never answered you on Facebook, that's kind of the reason.
Yeah, for your listeners. So I'm so curious for you. Can I ask you? So what was your aha moment with spellers? Like, when? So you used to say it wasn't a thing, and then you said it is?
Yeah. So with spelling, I mean, I ran a medical practice for 16 years with my late husband. And here's the few things. I didn't believe in competence. I didn't presume competence. The whole thing with spellers is to presume competence. In other words, our kids are understanding everything. And 2 years ago, I would have said to you, I'm not sure Joey even knows his last name. And you've seen some of the things that he's saying now. Okay. Yeah. He's brilliant. And he's not only brilliant, he's deep, he's poetic, he's so insanely smart. He can do huge math problems right in his head. He knows secrets of the universe that I can't even believe in. I mean, I can believe in them, but I can't even believe that he's saying them. Right. And I never would have believed it if I hadn't experienced it. And let me tell you, Lucy, if you know my story about becoming a speller, you would see that I got to where we are by a hair. Like, there were so many reasons that we were going to give up and say, yep, nope, that just proves my point. He doesn't know. It just proves my point. Oh. And but all these serendipitous things kept happening that made me keep going until one day when he openly spelt an answer and I realized he was there. And it took us 2 years to get there. So had I not stuck with it, I would have been even more reinforced in my belief that it's for some, but not for everyone.
Right.
When now I believe it's for everyone. I do.
Wow. I just have so much like respect for the community that you're part of, not by choice, but then what you guys do. Like the parents are just on the front lines. Like you're just fighting for your kids and like listening to the telepathy tapes. And like, it was such a, it's so messed up to say, but in our culture, I have 2 kids and like one of the biggest fears you have is if your kid's going to have autism. Like that's, and then to hear how misunderstood these kids are.
And how criticized the parents are for any,
Yeah.
just as this is exactly why I wanted to do the podcast today, because if they have a belief on any particular way, there's going to be a demographic that's going to be kind of against it. I want to go back to the algorithm for something too, is because, so I was living in my bubble, and I agree with you. I think it's especially in the evening when I go onto TikTok, for example, I want to be in my bubble. I don't need something to rile me before I go to bed by any means. But a topic came up recently, and I had a very strong opinion about it because of all the reinforcement videos that I had seen on my opinion. And Ron comes to bed and I said, how about that so-and-so? Amazing that people just don't get it. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he had a totally different belief on this subject than I did. Now, how can this man that I adore, I love more than anything in the entire world, have such a completely different opinion? Well, we decided to look at each other's TikTok's accounts for a while just to see. He had very convincing, very, very different narratives that were being sent to him than I had been sent to me. And that's when I started realizing how concerning that it gets, that when people say, I cannot believe you would be a person to believe that way. And what they don't understand is that they're getting what their algorithm is reinforced. They know how to reinforce you, and the powers that be know how to make videos to keep you reinforced.
Right.
So you just never are getting, and you're never getting anything but the choir preaching to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's when you were talking a little bit about like, you had mentioned things like engage in identity-based reasoning, avoid nuances, and all of those things. We have to find times in our day to ask questions. One of my favorite things to do, so I love traveling. I used to do it a lot more before I had kids, which was a really long time ago. I find that whenever I go to a different country, there is nothing better to kind of wipe me out of my reality than seeing the way other people live in different countries.
Yeah.
and their different belief systems. And, have a conversation with the cab driver, have a conversation with random people that you meet on a bus. I remember I had a certain belief one time that I tried to throw down my dad's throat when my dad was alive, and he would never listen to, he'd never believe me. And then he sat next to somebody on an airplane who had my opinion, and he comes to me, well, I guess there's something to all you've been saying all these years. Well, thank you so much, Dad, for after 10 years of me saying it, you don't believe it, but you're going to believe the random stranger.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's really important to have these conversations, and I think the real world is so huge for this. And where I work, we are a newsroom, but we're ideologically like split 3 ways between people who are undecided in the election. A third was undecided in the election, a third voted for Kamala, and a third voted for Trump. And the reason we know that is because we did a poll 2 weeks before the election, like on a retreat, to just be like, who people are voting for. We had no idea what the results were going to be.
Right.
And that's what came out. And so in our office, we talk about things. We talk about different international relations, things that are happening or domestic policy. And we have debates about it, and no one leaves the conversation being like, you suck. You just kind of go, oh, that's interesting. That's a good point of view. And you kind of just say, I'm glad you have that point of view. This is my point of view. And we can still be friends. And I think it's helpful with like the news and how we cover it, because we're bringing in different perspectives and it's not a echo chamber. I mean, it's always obviously hard. Nothing's going to be perfect, but compared to other newsrooms, I think that's what's been so great about working here. And also a big reason why I was even able to kind of feel the strength to do my own content, because I was working in an environment where it was encouraged to have your own opinions and not just to go along with the group. So the more we can have that, the better. We need people, real life interactions with different points of view.
Opinions is a really important word to talk about. We used to not have to have an opinion about everything. There was a time when I was much younger and it was like, I didn't have opinions on this and that. And
let's bring that back.
Yeah, right? Like, it's like, I remember somebody saying something recently and wanted to know my opinion. And I'm like, I don't want to have an opinion on that. I mean, the people say, oh, you're
not
you're
my
not
wheelhouse.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Not my circus, not my monkeys.
Yes, I was about to say that.
And that saves me some days, because
so huge.
The amount of stress and the amount of burden that we are holding by trying to be a part of every conflict that's out there. We are not designed to be a part of 20 different fights. Okay.
Preaching to the choir. So this is so interesting because I obviously make climate content, and we had that devastating flash flood that just happened.
Yes.
With those poor girls at the camp that passed away. And obviously it's a climate change story, whatever. And I was sitting on it for a few days. And I said at the beginning of my video, I said, I'm never going to be someone who's going to comment on every tragedy. Like, I'm not going to be the person who's going to have a take of like a mass shooting. I'm sorry. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to comment on climate stuff that I think is important to have a discussion about. And maybe I'm going to bring in a bit of information that you did not know that will give you a different layer of understanding, some nuance. Maybe if you're walking around with climate anxiety and now you think the river in your town's going to overflow, or you watch my video, you'll realize that won't happen, whatever it may be. So I did comment on that, but I said at the beginning, like, can we just talk? This is the worst day of so many people's lives. Like, this is like the worst tragedy that some individuals are dealing with. So the personal tragedy is so devastating, but then there's like the collective tragedy and the collective misinformation or just alarmism and fear. And so I did make a video about that. But yeah, I totally, like, as I've entered back into being like public facing, I'm like, I'm not commenting on everything, like, to a point. And I'm not going to follow the news so freaking closely about stuff because it just hooks you into fear. The way the news works, I've noticed with people in my personal life, the way that they react to the news is so destructive and they get so emotional.
Yes. So here's where I feel the disconnect with it is if there's something you can do about it.
Right.
If there is a active, whether it's donating money towards what you believe in, whether it's hosting something or helping make a change, then I 100% believe that if you've got an interest in a particular subject, that you should dive into it and try in your ways to educate others as to why it's something that's important. I have no problem with that.
Same.
But just being angry and yelling at people who have the same sides without doing anything beneficial other than yelling, because nobody gets convinced by being yelled at. Nobody does. If you want to change somebody's mind, you have to approach it softly. And people say, we have to go fight. I disagree. I don't believe going out there and fighting is how you change minds. You educate. You have conversations. You bring awareness. But fighting is not what moves people. You hold a pillow over somebody's face, they're just going to kick and scream harder. But if you say, can I tell you my experience? That's when change, and maybe it won't alter them. That's fine too. But that's a much better way of potentially creating change.
Also, I think we live in such an interesting time, and sometimes I think we have a collective trauma of the past, and it's playing out in present times, and the analogy is no longer relevant. So people have anxiety, like, we're going to go to World War II, like, whatever. And it's like, are we though? Like, and I get it. You have that primal anxiety, and in the past, that's how some of these things did play out. But that maybe the story this time is different. And I think all we can do is, clean up your side of the street, like get your house in order. Like, I
love that.
Like I it's an attention economy, right? So I think about this and I'm like, I want to be so solid in myself and grounded in my beliefs and what I stand for and model for other people what that is like so that they can then do that in their life and they can do whatever version of what I'm doing in their life. And
Perfect.
the biggest like revolution you can do is like be a solid person in such a crazy world that we live in. The more successful or visible that I become, the more I can then also create change, because then I have power, I have influence, I have the ability to enact change. But if I'm just sitting there over there feeling disempowered, screaming at the system, and I'm angry and I'm in fear, what change am I doing other than like hurting my nervous system? When I was talking to you, I want to tell you a little like, anecdote about like why I got the guts to start speaking out more, is because I actually did some therapy and I worked with her a few times, and like I had a lot of early childhood experiences. You could call them like trauma with a low T, I would say, where every kid gets traumatized, right? Because before you're 7 years old, you don't have the words and the ability to process things properly. And so stuff that could be totally mundane can traumatize your nervous system because you don't know how to deal with it. And so for me, I had this repeating pattern in my life where I would get to a certain level of visibility and then I would self-sabotage because I wouldn't feel safe.
Yeah.
I was able to go back and release that. And I literally thought, like, if I'm ever speaking my truth, like, I will not be safe. I'll lose everything that I have. And so I would, over and over throughout the years, get a bit of a following, do something, and then I would ruin it and I would go black. Fear is like the ultimate illusion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it takes away your power. And whenever you're in fear, I mean, it sounds so dismissive, but
Well,
it's
it definitely
actually
takes
true.
away the power. I
Yes.
mean, this is exactly why it's so funny. I've stayed in my numbers for a very long time. Like I'm growing gradually, but I stay in my numbers, and I know there's a lot more I could do to get bigger. And I know energetically that I think I self-sabotage myself from getting much bigger because I know what's going to come along with that. The bigger you are, the more people that you're going to have to disagree with you. And so you have to ask yourself that question, at what point is it worth it anymore?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, for every now one person that's not agreeing with you, there's probably 20 more people you're helping. So
Totally. And that's what it's all about.
That's really what it comes down to and what it's all
Yeah,
about.
and I think
Absolutely.
this is me giving you permission. You need to grow bigger.
Thanks, Lucy.
Yeah, because I just think it's like the light that you're going to bring the world. Like I feel about it, like when I think about it in my mind, I think about like the light and like the darkness. And it's like the comments, the bots, the people disagreeing. I'm like, you don't know what you're doing. Like you are in fear. You are just going off of your instincts and being negative. I am standing in truth and light. And I want more people to be empowered to do that. And so as much as it's scary, it's like you have to take it one day at a time and live in your truth every day and know that every day, like the messages that are important are the ones that you're helping. And the ones that disagree with you ultimately could come around.
Yeah.
They don't know what they don't know.
Well, but Lucy, your approach to it is the reason I listen to you, because you actually talk about stuff that I would have put in my category of things that I don't think about. Like well, just because it's just another one of those things that I don't want to add stress to my life. So I don't necessarily research much on social media about the climate because I just don't feel that I have the capacity for it.
Right.
But there is something, and this is where I want to leave our listeners today. There is something about listening to people who are humble that it really endears me to them. When somebody comes on social media and they used to believe one way and now they believe a different way, they've already got my attention just from that, because of the fact that they've seen it on both sides and now they're choosing based on the bigger picture of it all. And I would say that I'd like to hear what your closing thoughts are in how we get people to change opinion, because it's not by watching an angry video that's on our side and sending them or tagging them on Instagram. Watch this, because that just makes you want to block you.
Yeah, no, I get it.
And it doesn't change much of anything. Yeah.
I know. Sometimes I want to just write a snarky little comment to some of these people. That happened to me today. I literally the comment didn't go through because I didn't have service. I was like, that saved me from myself. I know. Interesting, because it doesn't seem you watched what I said.
Pay attention to those signs. When the email drops or when the text doesn't send, that might be a sign from the universe, okay?
Oh my gosh, I know. It's so interesting. I feel like all you can do is model from a place.
Yes.
I think I'm a broken record, but it's like all you can do is model from your place of inner truth and groundedness. And I think when people are ready to hear it, they will find your content or similar people's content, and you will bring them in with a tone that, like you said, is humble and not polarizing. And I'm not always perfect. Like I just was saying, I'm snarky in comments. Like some of my videos are a little bit snarkier and like make fun of people, right? Like you have that like that low rung and high rung. I'm always going up and down it. But I think for me, the people that got me out of groupthink, I used to think that they were evil. I used to think the CEO of my company was evil at my old job. Where I work now, it's confusing to say, but my boss now, when I was at my old job, I thought she was evil based on the groupthink. And then I finally actually listened to one of her podcasts and I was like, this woman's brilliant. Like she's so nuanced, right. She's so smart. And it was just actually listening to her. None of the things that the groupthink had made me believe about her were true. She was actually what I had been waiting for. I was desperate for nuance and interesting conversation where there were not, third rail
the same
topics
narratives
that you couldn't talk. Yes,
right. The same narratives.
And like, just be true, be honest. Like,
yeah.
let's talk about it, right? And so that was to me kind of my like gateway drug was my boss now, Barry Weiss. And I hope that I can be that for other people. And the reason I started making content too is like I feel like it's this constant unfurling. And like for me, Barry was that 4 years ago. And it's like I will be that probably for people now who are ready to hear it. And so and then whoever I impact will be that for somebody else and will have a slightly different message that could get to more people.
Fabulous. Lucy, where can people find you? So you're on, you said TikTok, Instagram at Lucy Biggers, right?
Yeah, so Lucy Biggers on, B as in boy, Biggers. It's funny because I'm 5'1", but it's Lucy Biggers. And it's my first and last name. And then I'm on everything I kind of repost on every platform, but TikTok's probably the best. And then Instagram is like a little bit more polished.
I'll put it in the show notes of how to reach it.
Do you have a
website? Do you have a what? No.
I work for the Free Press, which also I should shout out, thefp.com. It's awesome. I run their social media there, so I'm not a writer. I've written a few things for them, but I've been there for 2.5 years. So thefp.com. Find us on social media, the FP or the Free Press on Instagram.
Love it.
And find me, message me. I love DMs.
I really hope that this opened your eyes and help add a little calm to your life. So you go out there, you be willing to hear other people's sides. And in the meantime, remember, you don't have to have an opinion about everything. All right.
I love that.
Thanks, Lucy.
So much, Betsy.
We'll be back with you next week. Take care.